Okay, so now we can just do our little prayer of reminding ourselves of our reliance on the Buddha, the first two lines, and the second two lines stating our purpose, our motivation, our purpose. And that when we understand how karma works, which we're going to be discussing, the motivation, the reason, the goal, the purpose behind what we do and say and think is the key factor in determining the quality of that action. It's a very clear point. We'll go into this. So here, very altruistic motivation of being here together to listen to all these words in the long goal, with a long term in mind, so that we, as the last line, as it says, so we can become a Buddha, a fully enlightened being, develop our natural potential for perfection, so we can be of benefit to others. Thinking like that, So think of those words at the first recitation. We'll just do two more. A second one in English again. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, the Sangha. And by the virtuous karma of listening to these teachings, may we become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. Sangye chadang tsoke chognam la janchu baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chanyen gi personam ki drola penche sangye drupa shok. All right. So this Lamrim, I mean, I know when I first, like I always say this, and when I first heard my very first teachings, I happened to be from Lama's Zopa Rinpoche, a 1 month intensive Lamrim course, as they called it. I not only did I not understand the concept of this course, but I didn't understand the content either. So it was quite confusing. But I knew there was something there, so I persevered. So then what is it? Very simply, what is it? It's just really a presentation. If you're learning mathematics, if you're learning music, if you're learning carpentry, what it is, the qualified carpenter, the qualified musician, the qualified mathematician has taken the essence of all the knowledge that they have gained and put into their mind, which culminates in being a musician, a mathematician, a cook, or whatever. They take the essence of that and present it, the essence of it, like bullet points, if you like, of the main points at each of the, and it's divided into 3 levels, 3 stages. That's why I like to call it junior school, high school, and university. Now that's a really good analogy, whatever you call it in Switzerland. I don't know, when you go to school, but we understand when it comes to any topic, anything we learn, it could be this way. You could pick up a book, and it could be the summary, the bullet points, the summary of the main points, the main principles of that body of knowledge. And obviously you present it in an orderly way. You don't present the most advanced stuff in the first chapter. That'll be too confusing. You present the easy stuff first, the first level, and then it's like that. So that's what the Lamrim is. Essentially, that's then confusing because then you think, well, why am I listening to this concept of karma? And why am I listening to a theory about impermanence? And why am I listening to a theory about the mind? And why am I listening to a theory about reincarnation? Part of the problem in our culture, I think, is because we hear Buddhism and all we think of is the word meditation. So we hear all these words and we think, what's all this about? What's this got to do with the price of fish, So we get confused. So in order to understand even that this packaging is basically a packaging of the main of the viewpoints that Buddha is saying are views about reality. That's his main point. And this is curious to hear. He is basically saying he has become what they call a Buddha. He says that he has found that is the potential of everybody. He's found that from his own experience, that this perfection of all the goodness and the eradication of all the rubbish in the mind, that's the culmination. That's what you end up graduating as a Buddha. And what he's saying is everything it's all to do with the mind, because a Buddha it's a name given to an enlightened mind, So what he's saying essentially is that everything in our mind at the moment, not everything, many of the viewpoints in our mind at the moment, which is what he calls being in samsara, he says they are viewpoints that aren't in sync with how things exist. That the key reason we suffer is that there's this massive disconnect at various levels at various levels, there's a massive sense of disconnect between what we think is real and what is real. That is really a way of putting the entirety of the whole path to enlightenment. So the job then is, you could argue the whole job of being a Buddhist, starting in grade 1, entry-level junior school, is listening first. Once you've decided, no one can force you to do this, you've entered into this path because you like the idea of it and you're prepared to give Buddha a go. So what the whole path is you listen to what he presents at the very first level, junior school first, about how things exist. And he says, if you look into your mind, these are the opposite of what you think, or they're not the same as what you think. And why you suffer, honey child, is because you're not in. This is reality. And this is why you've got to understand Buddha's more like a scientist than a Christian concept of God. In fact, this is so hugely important to understand. Otherwise, you won't understand what Buddha's teachings are. You'll just think it is another bunch of dogma. There's somebody called Buddha. Instead of Jesus, it's called Buddha, and he's made up this stuff. And the only way we can, and what we've got to do is believe in it. That's beyond hilarious for the Buddha. That's like thinking Einstein made up something. He decided to make up E equals MC squared. A mathematician decided to make up the concept of 1 + 1. A botanist made up the concept of weeds and herbs. They made them up. And they say, this is truth, and you'd better believe it, baby. That's how we think of religious philosophy, and that's not the Buddha at all. He's more like Einstein, and I have to keep saying this because it's too shocking for us. Insofar as what he's presenting is what he has found to be true. And what he's saying is why we suffer, because our minds don't realize what is true. We have a bunch of other views that are sometimes directly opposite or vaguely opposite, but different. So this disconnect between what we think is true and what is true is why we suffer. So the closing of that gap is the getting of wisdom is finally the quality of a Buddha. And Buddha's basically his presentation from junior school, high school, university, postgraduate, is a presentation of those viewpoints. And then what you do with those viewpoints, you listen to them, you think about them, you nut them out, you try to make some coherent sense of them, and then getting shamatha, this brilliant technique these Indians invented well before the Buddha, that enables you to get to a more subtle level of mind. With that subtle level of mind, finally, when you get it, you're able to directly experience the truth of those theories. That's how you become a Buddha. That's the background. That's the framework. So the Lamrim is a presentation of these viewpoints, basically. So, it's up to us to decide if we think Buddha's a worthwhile person and we're prepared to give him a go. So we start thinking, listening to what he says, and then we try to internalize it. That's it. Just like you would with music. Just like you would with mathematics, just the same. You have to choose it first. And then you enter into it and you listen to the theories and you go home and you internalize them. That's it. From here to Buddhahood. From here to perfecting being Bach, That's the essence. So the goal, the culmination, where you graduate, where you end at the end of this course, which could take countless, you could learn it in a couple of years. You can learn all the points, you can memorize it perfectly, but to experientially internalize it and make it truth for you, depending on where you're at, depending on how much work you've done in past lives and how advanced you are already, it could take you several more lifetimes to internalize it, to perfect it, to become a Buddha. So that's the idea. That's the idea. That's the idea. So the Lamrim presents the essence. So what Atisha is the kind of, excuse me, I haven't finished my coffee. Before it gets cold, I'm attached to my hot coffee. It's a triple espresso with this unique American invention called half and half. Everybody on the planet copies America, but for some reason, nobody has copied this brilliant invention of Americans called half and half. And half is 50% milk and 50% cream. And you just can't beat it. Ordinary milk is pathetic in comparison, So it's triple espresso. It was full before. Oh, there it is. Where is it? Here. And it's half and half and a big fat spoon of honey. That's my preferred coffee. Normally I have one in the morning when I get my breakfast, but today I had two. Extremely delicious. And it's not a dark, ugly black bean. I hate those. They're horrible. It's a nice medium, kind of sweet Colombian bean is my favorite. And I grind my own coffee, very fine, almost like Turkish. Okay, that's how I make coffee. Nothing wrong with knowing what you want, and if you can't get it, you get happy. But if you can, then it's a bonus, isn't it? Well, seeing as I make my own coffee, I can always do it. Okay, back to the topic. All right. So the goal is this Buddhahood. The goal is this perfection. I always telling you the etymology of the word Buddha, but somebody pointed out I'm totally mistaken. So I'm really sorry to mislead you. It's actually the etymology of the Tibetan equivalent of the word Buddha, and that's Sangye. It's the etymology of that word, not the word Buddha, because it's different meaning in Sanskrit. And somebody pointed out my mistake. I've been saying it all over the world for so long, so I'm sorry to lie to you. But the word Sangye, Sang implies the eradication of the rubbish, and Gye implies the development to perfection of the goodness. Speaking really simply. And so you could argue one way of describing the job of being a Buddhist is the gradual stripping away of these layers upon layers upon layers, from the gross to the most subtle layers of misconceptions in the mind. So you can describe the stages of development in terms of the subtlety of the misconceptions you are stripping from your mind. So basically the job is removing the rubbish, and by the time you removed all the rubbish, you're Buddha. That's one way of putting it. And there's two ways of doing that. I mean, we hear all the time, if you read the teaching, you hear all the time, we have to learn to know what to get rid of, what to abandon, which is all the rubbish, misconceptions, and what to develop, which is the virtues. So it's sort of, in other words, pulling out the weeds and growing the flowers. That's a way of putting it. So that's the principle behind it. That we have this mind, and it's got misconceptions in it to incredible subtle degree. That's why you've got to have advanced. Well, you've got to wait till you're more advanced before you can get to the subtler levels, obviously. And we've got to, and learning to remove it. And this is the method. So this explicitly, the practice of being a Buddhist explicitly is getting wisdom, getting in touch with reality. But what it brings, what it is the method for getting happy, the method for stopping suffering. And that's basically, this is presented in the Four Noble Truths. And then, of course, you've got the compassion wing, which is all part of it. And that's where you're able to help others. But that's also a continuation of you removing the obstacles from your mind, Okay. So the very first level, the first one I like to call junior school, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, speaking according to the lineage appropriately, translating from Tibetan, he would say they are the teachings that are suitable, the teachings and practices suitable to the practitioner of the least capability. In other words, the grossest level of the grossest level. Then you got the high school is the teachings and practices suitable for the disciple of the middle capability. And then you have the greatest capability, and then you got postgraduate, which is Tantra. That's my way of putting it. And I think it works in this simple analogy. It's simple, but it works because we comprehend that. As soon as we say high school, we know you're a little bit more advanced than junior. We know that. But you say middle scope, because we haven't got that concept in our culture, Swiss or Australian, then we don't quite hear it properly, We sort of fantasize it or make up something, So clearly then you can say the essential job of being a Buddhist is to know your mind intimately, identify the misconceptions, argue with them, and this is going from the grossest to the most subtle level, and eventually eliminate them from the mind altogether. You can say that. Then on top of that, you've got all these practices that support that job. That's the heart job of being a Buddhist. But you've got lots and lots of practices that support you to do that enable you. All the ones that they call in Buddhism the preliminary practices is a really good term. Nundro, they say in Tibetan. They're the practices that kind of, because to even get to start to work on your mind is itself really quite advanced. Most of us don't even notice our thoughts because we're so involved in our body, So, I mean, so then living in vows is like a tremendously powerful technique, without which they would say you really can't do the job. You've got to understand that, and that's taught at junior school. You've got to understand that principle. Then you've got lots of things too, like all different kinds of meditation practices, especially at a more advanced level. Like Dzogchen and Mahamudra, different tantric techniques. They're all leading to the same thing. If they're not, then don't do them because they're a load of rubbish. But some have got different functions, But the hard job from here to Buddhahood is to identify what's in your mind, to identify the neuroses, to identify the misconceptions, argue with them by using wisdom, and then practicing thinking that way, and acting that way, and speaking that way, until eventually it becomes perfected. That's the way that's the hard job. The hard job of being a Buddhist, So the first stage of the Lamrim, there's a preliminary practice that Atisha. Okay, where did Atisha was the first person. Atisha, this Indian scholar, yogi, saint from the 10th, whatever century, Indian, he was invited to Tibet later and spent the rest of his last 15 or something years in Tibet. And when he got there, it's kind of speaking very roughly, he noticed the Dharma was flourishing. All these Buddhists, it had become now several hundred years, Buddhism was pervading the country since the 7th century. But I think he sort of thought they'd lost the plot a bit, because definitely the Vajrayana, the most advanced teachings, they were brought fully developed in the mind of Padmasambhava from the very beginning, And so he could see that there was not quite there was a lack of understanding the stages, the structure, the stages, seeing where all the teachings fit, It's a bit like if you open up a book of mathematics and you don't know where everything fits. You're not quite sure if this is advanced, is it middle, is it beginning, is it whatever. So he took all the essential points actually from this vast body of knowledge that really tracks itself back to these genius Indians before him, and they had a highly developed system before the Buddha came along, as His Holiness says, was these amazing Indians more than 3,000 years ago who were the ones who began the investigation into the nature of self. That was their expertise, and that is Buddha's expertise, absolutely. So this highly developed system with incredible body of knowledge, of course, which I always say that we Europeans, we Australians, we English, we Americans know zero about, and look down upon with our incredible hubris and arrogance, thinking we're the smarty pants in the world, I mean, we track ourselves back to the clever Greeks, but we wouldn't have a clue about Indians. But now only really, I think, since His Holiness has been touching the world the last 45 years, 50 years, that we're now really seeing the incredibly sophisticated knowledge, that is still unique to the Buddha and unique to India. As I said, this is not being rude to the West. It's not being rude at all. It's not being rude to neuroscientists or mathematicians. It's not, but it's a fact. And the little bit that I have studied, I can say this with confidence, the literature on the mind itself is, because their view of the mind is so dramatically more subtle, more utterly completely different, and that's why unless we understand the mind in theory, we won't have a clue what we're talking about here. It's all just a load of rubbish, So this is why it's so important always to start with the mind, because this is where, as Lama Zopa, when he started teaching us foreigner people in the early 70s, he didn't just launch into the typical presentation of the Lamrim, because, as we say in English, if a Tibetan is listening or an Indian is listening, you're teaching to the choir. They all understand. But we foreigners who come into those classes in India, Nepal, India, early 70s, we hear the word mind, we assume that, Buddha's talking about your brain. Well, he's not. It was not his expertise, I promise. So then Lama Zopa would always start his courses telling about the particular characteristics of the mind, what it is. Because if you think the mind can become a Buddha and you think it's your brain, you're going to be in big trouble, honey. You better know what Buddha means by the mind. This already is radically different. So yet again, after the 47th time we've heard this, we've got to say it again because it's what you asked me to talk about. So the very first thing is the mind, and its particular characteristic, which is demented in our culture, of being beginningless and endless, straight away. And that implies immediately, there's no creator up there saying, hey, I haven't got a job. What do you mean beginningless? There's no concept of creator in Buddhism. There's no concept of mistake. He says that's one of the major misconceptions. He's not being rude, but he's found from his own experience it's a misconception, with great respect. So, okay, so mind, what is it? It is this cognitive process. It's got levels of it, grosser level, sensory consciousness. We've got mental consciousness, which is, and by definition, all of mind is not physical. The eyeball is physical, but eye consciousness, which works hand in hand with the eyeball, is necessarily not physical. This is a fundamental point to take as your working hypothesis in Buddhism. Eventually, when you get single-pointed concentration, samadhi, these genius Indians found, you can then prove that to be true. But here it's a hypothesis. It is not physical. It is not the handiwork of a parent. It is not the handiwork of a creator. It doesn't come from nothing. It's non-physical, and it's a beginningless and endless continuity of moments, continuity like a river of mental moments. This moment of consciousness, that moment of consciousness, this moment of consciousness, leading from previous to go to previous to previous. So that's, as a concept, is not difficult. It's just that it shocks us, you know. So that's our first point: beginninglessness of mind. And basically, this is the law of cause and effect. And this is already arguing with one of the prevailing views that Buddha diverged from, that there is this essential, intrinsic, permanent, unchanging self, Atman, the Indians called it, and that there's an essential, unchanging energy called God that is the source of everything. So Christianity broadly has that view. Islam broadly has that view, you know, soul and a creator. That's philosophically, Buddha says, it's not viable, and experientially, he says it's not true. That's his view. That's where he diverged from the Indians, you know, from the Hindus. So mind is not physical, not the handiwork of mummy and daddy. It's got much subtler levels of capacity for cognition, which we can access by getting this brilliant skill called samadhi, single-pointed concentration, which is necessarily a subtler level of your mind that doesn't depend upon the brain. You've got to take this as a given. This is the basis from the start, you know, because everything is dependent upon this. That's the mind we're trying to transform, not your brain. Not trying to transform your brain. You're not trying to, you know, make your brain change. Your brain will change. Of course it will. Because that's the method for what neuroplasticity is simply the acknowledgement now by modern scientists that by thinking differently, it changes the brain. Buddha's been telling us this very politely for 2,500 years, but now we've discovered it and we're very excited. Okay, so he's saying this mind of ours, and he's talking from his own experience. He didn't pluck this out of the sky. It's not from revelation. He's not speculating. He's not making it up. He's discovered this reality himself, that the mind can be perfected. The delusions, the misconceptions can be removed, and that the virtues can be perfected. And that's the natural state of every living being. All beings possess Buddha nature. They mightn't say it at the very beginning, but I'm stating it here, you know, as this is our starting point. All mind possesses, the term in Tibetan that we translate in English as sentient being, which is very delicious in Tibetan, is mind possessor, sem chen, having a haver of mind, sem chen, mind haver, mind possessor. So I think that's a very delicious term. There are trillions of these mind possessors he has observed. And indeed, the Indians before him observed it as well, with their own subtle level of mind. There are trillions of levels of minds, all in samsara, who are caught, and being in samsara, one way of simply putting it, is caught up in all these neuroses. The degree to which you're caught up in neuroses, and therefore the degree to which you create negative karma, and therefore the degree to which you are suffering, equals the degree of your intensity in this samsara. So you've got the really heavy-duty suburbs in samsara, and you've got the more happy, exciting suburbs. But they're all by definition in samsara, which means you're going to keep going from one to the other until the cows come home, until you remove the delusions from the mind. All the delusions. So the mind is beginningless, doesn't come from mummy and daddy. And this is this point alone, at the very beginning of hearing the Lamrim, at the very beginning of hearing the Lamrim, this point is crucial to think about, because everything else is contingent upon this, which is that the mind is not physical. It's a beginningless, endless continuity, and the law, the natural law that Buddha has observed, the natural law, and this is a major point for us who've come from Christian and Muslim and Jewish background. The essential thing is that this is natural law. Natural law, not Buddha's law. It's not equivalent to God's law. No concept. It's natural law. Buddha has found it to be true that the law that runs the universe, that basically runs the minds of all beings, is even all minds run within this law. You know, this the law of karma, the law of cause and effect, such that every millisecond of what any mind thinks, what any speech says, and what any body does is the process that programs that mind and turns it into its future, produces the future person, the future experiences, the future tendencies, the future relationships. We are the producers of this. And this law of karma is the law that they've sort of like the law of growing things, is labeled the law of botany. Botany wasn't, this is a crucial point we understand natural law. It's not made up by a botanist. A botanist didn't go along and invent botany. No, things have been growing well before botanists came along with their clever thoughts and all their Latin and Greek words. Things were always growing, just that you didn't give it a label. That's all. It's a natural law. You put the conditions of the universe together such that things grow. That's called botany. Well, this is called karma. That's shorthand. And it's what a Buddha has observed, and where he has observed it in his own mind. Can't see it externally. This is the law that runs the universe. This is the very first point you learn, you know. The mind is driven by the law of karma. This is really the essence of this whole junior school. There are more points to it. The very first thing he gets us to think about, the very first thing Atisha gets us to think about, like a preliminary little contemplation, is to think about how precious this life is. Why? Because he wants to give us, his agenda is to give us a wake-up call to not want to waste this life. When you start to compare it with the rest of everybody else, just look around you. Like often they have you'll go online and you'll see there's like 1% of the world has computers, and 1% has enough money to live, and we're in the 0.0001%, the Buddha would say, of all sentient beings having a human body, just having a human body, like an absolute miracle. The number of beings there are is a trillion times more than the 7 billion humans. So having a human body, you know, is astonishing. So begin to get some sense of our good fortune, which wasn't given to us by anybody. You know, we created it. So then the energy from that is conclusion. Don't waste it, baby. Then you enter into the path, and the very first thing you're going to listen to is Buddha's explanations about how things are impermanent. It's one of his major philosophical views, one of his major findings. And it's hardly rocket science. I mean, we know things change, but if we look at it, we've got, they teach 2 levels of impermanence. There's gross impermanence, which is like things break. Flowers come into being and they die. People get, cups break, relationships end, tables collapse, trees die. We know that's a gross level that's evident to anybody with half a brain. So we know that, we can see it, but he says we don't join the dots, we don't get the learning from it. Then you've got subtle impermanence, which is really a major teaching and a major topic of meditation, especially it is a major topic of meditation. Extraordinary subtle impermanence, which can't be cognized, can't be directly experienced at the grosser level, has to be done in meditation, in samadhi, and it can easily be confused with the teachings about emptiness. that things, because when we realize this subtle impermanence, such that the very millisecond of something's coming into being at the same time is the cause of its going out of being, you know. So it's a much more subtle realization. But Atisha at this point doesn't bother with the subtle interpretation. He just simply wants us to realize impermanence. But at the very beginning stages, again, it's his same agenda. He wants us to get a wake-up call. So he teaches about gross impermanence, but not impermanence of your computer or your cups, but impermanence of this person. And that's called death. Why? The reason only why he talks about death there is to give us a wake-up call. So already we've contemplated the preciousness of this life. Conclusion, I mustn't waste it. Then we enter into the path, and now we start to hear about the impermanence of death, and he gives these bullet points to think about. The conclusion is increased wish not to waste this precious life, because one, death is definite. Two, more scary, the time of it is not definite. You could die today, as Lama Zopa says. In fact, that's the best way to live your life. Then you'll really get the wake-up call. If you really did have a literal deadline, and it's such a good term, deadline, that you had a death date at midnight. I mean, even you can see it. You even got a flight tonight. Look at how you galvanized into action. If you have going somewhere tonight, you've got to get to the airport. You're not going to hang around getting lazy, fight with your husband, start painting the back walls, start getting the carpenter to come in. You've got to get to the airport. So you suddenly think about this. You prioritize all your activity to focus solely on doing only what will get you to the airport by midnight. That's the way to think about death. If you thought you were going to die, best to wait. It'll galvanize you into not wasting your life. Why bother fighting with someone? Why get upset? Why get angry? Why panic about Mr. Trump running the world? Who cares? I'm going to be dead tonight, So you get a sense of perspective. But we forget that. We act like the world's a million years. We've got a million years to live. We get so involved, stick our nose in every damn's opinion, have all these conspiracy theories, look on every website on the planet and argue and complain and moan. And it's clear we don't realize we're impermanent. It is clear we think we are permanent. This is one of the grossest mistakes we make, Buddha says. He said, all the Lamas say, if you just realize impermanence, your life would be transformed because you wouldn't waste it anymore. Death and impermanence, really clear. That's the very first step. Next one, next bit of agenda. Then Atisha gets us to really get scared. He says, and then now we start to look at the type of rebirths you could get when you die. That's his agenda. His agenda is to give us a wake-up call. And you start to contemplate, based on Buddha's own experiential findings, all the types of rebirth available to sentient beings that we have all created anyway. And you've got 99.99999% of them are terrible. The animal births and the spirit births and the hell births. At this point, they don't tell you much about how they can be true. They simply state them. But we can look into that. If you've heard the Vajrayana teachings and you've heard about the model of the universe that describes that the physical world, this is more advanced, but it's helpful to put it into practice and think about it, to understand these realms of existence. That there's in the universe there is matter, and they don't say this in the Lamrim. I'm bringing it in, okay? But I find it very helpful. That the universe consists of matter and minds, and that's it. All minds are inextricably linked to their own, and all matter, is the four elements. That's the model they still use. We used to use that back in Galileo's time, wasn't it? The four elements. Earth, air, fire, and water. And all minds are inextricably linked to their own set of the four elements. This is the model. If you go to your Tibetan doctor, they'll feel your pulses and they can feel the imbalance of the wind energy in there, and that's because you've got attachment and now you've got anxiety. They can see the intimate relationship between the physical energies and the mental energies at a subtle level. This is the universe. So creating negative karma, which we'll get to in a minute, we're culminating in the junior school with karma. But we'll go to there. But everything we think and do and say programs our mind, and because our mind is inextricably linked to our own set of the wind energies, then the negative karmas pollute the winds and then eventually manifest as gross illness and future suffering rebirths. It's all laid out logically when you understand that principle. Now they don't discuss it too much, just presenting this view from his own findings that there are countless sentient beings, and the Hindus all found this as well before the Buddha. of enormous suffering. So by contemplating here the possibility of suffering rebirths, which of course in our culture is very hard because we don't think like that, unless we're Christian or Muslim, you think about heaven and hell. But Buddha also mentions the animals and the spirits, you see. Then you increase your wake-up call. Well, I don't want that kind of suffering. But even from the Buddhist perspective, even forget the lower realms, even forget that. We can look into this life and see the suffering, the way karma ripens. If bad things happen to you, you get sick, people are mean to you, the world is horrible, there are terrorism and wars and dramas, and anybody knows they don't want that. And so then here, the energy is, well, I don't want that kind of rebirth. Thank you very much. I don't want that kind of suffering. Thank you very much. Someone shows you a movie about cancerous lungs and see the terrible, disgusting state of those lungs, and you go, I don't want that. The next step is, well, what's the cause of this? And so your doctor will tell you it's smoking, and Buddha will tell you about karma. So all this culminates in the final point in the first scope in the junior school, which is, one, this life is precious, don't want to waste it. 2, it's impermanent, I could die today. Oh my God, definitely don't want to waste it. 3, oh my God, look at the possibility of types of rebirths. Don't want those, baby. 4, how do I stop this? Karma. That's the culmination of junior school. So the essence of junior school is abide by the laws of karma. That's the essence of it, And that's the steps that lead to it psychologically, So the essence of karma is every millisecond of what we think is either a negative or a positive state of mind. Oh, there's a third category, like I always talk about the mechanics of the mind, but don't worry about those here. Either we have a neurotic, deluded, I-based, fear-based, distressing, disturbing, delusional state of mind, which is not in sync with reality and which causes much suffering to me and causes me to harm others. There's either an action done on basis of one of those states of mind, which is labeled a negative action, and that'll sow seeds in the mind that if you leave them there, they're going to grow and it's dynamic and get bigger and bigger and then multiply and then bring many future suffering results. And then the other states of mind are the positive ones, the virtuous ones. So any actions we do that are labeled virtuous, which are things we do with our body and speech based on a positive state of mind, a virtuous state of mind, love, kindness, compassion, etc., they will sow seeds in the mind that will ripen in the future as our happy experiences. It's such a simple concept, you can't believe it, It's such a simple concept. Actions that are called negative ripen as suffering. Actions that are called positive are ripen as happiness. So logically, if that's true, please, sir, please, miss, what's a negative action? How can I identify it? So you better learn what the hell a negative action is. What qualifies it as negative? It's not complicated theoretically. Yes, experientially, it's subtle, but you've got to have the theory first, Okay, so this is where we get. So here, this is the actions. We're not looking at the mind yet. That comes to junior. That gets to high school. So there are 4 ways in which our negative and positive actions can ripen. Just 4. 1, the type of body you get, the type of rebirth. Hell, spirit, animal, human, or God. A couple of those. There's 6 little suburbs in samsara. Forget the more subtle levels that the Hindus suggest called the form and formless realms. We don't worry about those here. Just think about, being in the grosser levels of samsara, the desire realm. This is called the realm of attachment. There are 6 suburbs in the realm of attachment. The 6 realms within this bigger one called the attachment realm, the desire realm. Okay, 6 suburbs. So, a negative action, one that there are 4 results, negative or positive. The first kind, the main result, the fully ripened result, they call it, is a type of rebirth. And that karmic seed that's in your mind from you having planted it will be triggered at the time of your death, that then programs you to go to the next mother. So in our case, we can deduce logically that a few weeks before we found our way to our mother's fallopian tube where it joined our daddy's sperm, we can deduce that we were, we were in a previous body a few weeks before that, and at the time of our death when it started, and one of our positive first kinds of the fully ripened result type seed, And in our case, we can say clearly it was an action of non-killing, a very specific intentional action of non-killing, or even more particularly, probably practice, as Lama Zopa says, in the context of keeping vows of non-killing, which we shall discuss. Though one of those seeds was triggered before we even stopped breathing in the previous life, not more than a few weeks before we found our way to our mother's fallopian tube. And that could have been in a worm or a kangaroo. You don't have to have been a human. One of our past non-killing karmic seeds was triggered. We've got trillions of them, so like an amazing thing that happened. At the same time as that seed was triggered, then all the other karmic seeds that would produce the other three results that are playing out right now in this life, that have been playing out from the second we came out of our mummy's womb, they're called, the next one is the very states of mind that you access in this life. We've got billions, and there's no state of mind we don't possess. And this is all sentient beings, are all the same. But the ones that are prevailing in this life, they're the ones that came together with this particular package of this particular body. So these are called your mental tendencies, whether you're the tendency to be good at football or murder or music or being kind, both emotional ones and intellectual ones and every other one, all the mental tendencies. And this already is a major point, indicating very clearly from Buddha's perspective that we don't get this stuff from our parents. This is very shocking to hear. No, they've got nothing to do with our being angry or jealous or good at music. They might have nourished our anger or our jealousy or our music by their activity, but they didn't give them to us. This is a wacky idea for the Buddha. They're our own habits, okay? So the second way our past karma is already triggered before we even passed away was our present mental tendencies that we are acting out in this life. The third lot of karmic seeds that were triggered at that time, they're called the experiences similar to the cause, and all those ones are what are, from the time we're born until the time we came out of our mother's womb, we can see we're very social beings. So all the experiences, mainly, we've had at the hand of other sentient beings. The cockroaches biting us, the rats biting us, the pussycat being kind, your mother being loving, your father being horrible, the next door neighbor shooting you, whatever it might be, all your experiences broadly at the hands of others, up from the time you're conceived up to now, they are called experiences, similar to the cause. The previous lot here are called the tendencies, similar to the cause. The cause in each case being you doing them. So if you've got the tendency to lie, then that's because you've lied in the past. If you have the experience of being lied to, that's because you've lied in the past. If you have experience of no one believing your words, that's from lying in the past. If you've got the experience of telling the truth, even if you're lying now, people will believe you. 50% of Americans believe every word Mr. Trump says. The other 50% believe every word's a lie. So he's clearly got different karma with different people, isn't it? You see? So the third way that our karma is playing out in this life, these seeds of which were triggered right at that time of conception, before conception, in the past life, they're called environmental karma. And this is very much more abstract. We think, what have my actions in a past life got to do with why food nourishes me, why I'm always smelling disgusting things, why I always get sick? It doesn't. But when we understand these four elements and the matter and the way the mind is conjoined with the four elements at a subtle level, and everything our mind does impacts upon our elements, which is producing our future happiness or health, and even the external environment, then it takes time to think about it, but all the logic is all there, you know. So the four ways in which our actions, every millisecond of our actions, can have any or all of these four results, depending on the intensity, the motivation, and so on and so forth. 1, a type of rebirth. 2, your mental tendencies in that rebirth, whether you're a lion or a mouse or a human. 3, your experiences at the hands of others, whether you're a mouse or a lion or a human. 4, the environmental result, the way the physical world impacts upon you. Now, if you think of this, there's nothing left in the universe. Everyone's life, we have a physical world we occupy, and the impact and the external things in this world impact upon us in one way or another, either nicely or badly. 1. 2, we have experience with other beings, they harm us or help us. 3, our own tendencies. And 4, even our body. And who was the creator of all of this? We are, babies. That's Buddha's view. So that's the essence of junior school. Now you better ask me some questions. 10 to 2. What time do we start? 1:50. 1:30. Come on, don't be ridiculous. What time do we start? What time do we start?
We start at 7 o'clock Swiss time.
Okay, so in 50 minutes. Okay, that's fine. So that's
Yes.
the junior school, okay, with a bit of background. Now you've got to ask me the questions. Do you understand what I've said? Can you hear the logic of it? If you can't, say no like this, and then we can talk to you. That's the essence of junior school, okay, the essence of the first scope. They don't talk to you like this in the Tibetan literature. I'm talking like an Australian, okay? Hopefully I haven't told a lie. So do you have any questions for me? No? Any questions of any kind?
Maybe talk about the importance about the last thoughts in your mind before you're dying. How important is that?
Well, yeah, okay, I can do that. But I need, yeah, okay, good. We'll keep it there as a question. That's good. Yeah, I mean, that's implied, isn't it? Definitely implied, but that's a crucial one. That's a whole kettle of fish. That's a whole thing. Absolutely. I will, but I want to hear other questions first. Any other questions? If there are any. If there's not, that's fine. I'm happy. Yes, Christine. Hello, sweet.
I'm just wondering about the environment, what you said. It means also that if I am very sensible of the pollution of the air, it's also because of my karma, or
Absolutely, darling. I mean, this is the point. Okay, let's look at that, because that's a very real one for us. This one of the environment is a huge topic, isn't it? So let's look at so if we just look at one type of negative action called killing, let's look at the 4 karmic results. 1, if killing is triggered at the time of your death as the main karma, then you would go to a lower realm rebirth, like a lion or a spirit or a hell being. But in our case, it was a human one, right? Now, 2nd, then the tendencies that we can see we got a mind. 3rd, our experiences. But the 4th one, okay, sorry, the first result of killing would be a lower rebirth, but we've clearly got one of non-killing. We've got the human body, but 2nd and 3rd and 4th, we can have those 3 results of killing in this human life. The 2nd one, and then you look at the human world, it would be you'd wake up in this life with a tendency to kill. Now look at most humans. Most humans kill something. Ants, rats, cockroaches. Not everybody might kill humans, but even certainly in the modern world, it's the most normal thing in the world to kill other creatures, isn't it? And I think that's a Christian background. I mean, I was taught as a Catholic that God made animals for our benefit. They don't have a soul. So it's that, and that's the view that prevails, I think, hugely prevails in the modern world. So most people are born with a tendency to kill, which is one of the worst things possible for the Buddhism, you know. The second way killing would ripen inside this life would be you get killed or you die young. You could be healthy, but your life runs out quickly. That's the result of past killing as an experience. Now, the third one is the physical world harms you. The environment, the pollution, the water, the food, sickness. Look at COVID. That was the collective karma of millions of humans from past killing from God knows how many lifetimes ago. Millions and millions of humans dying young and the physical world harming us. And you could just kiss your grandmother, you get COVID. Do you understand? So that's environmental karma of past killing. But if you, on the other hand, you know, I think I must have some virtuous karma from non-killing when it comes to the environment in this life. Even though I went to many, many countries, I remember I was helping this old dying man of 96 who had COVID. I was hugging him and kissing him. I never got COVID all the years. I'm not trying to be clever. I must have some virtuous karma environmentally of non-killing, because I eat rubbish food. I'm now 81 and I'm still quite healthy. I'm not trying to show off. I'm just seeing, well, good, it's virtuous karma, you know. It can be that way. So I'm just talking. So yes, absolutely. Pollution, the food, the air, the water, the physical world itself, how it impacts upon us. That and the specific one of pollution and causing us to be sick, that's the fruit of killing. Do you understand? Because think of it this way, and this is what's hard for us. Every tiny thing that we experience in terms of the environment and in terms of beings, how they treat us, and we get killed, we get lied to, stolen from, people are kind to us, the sun shines, the leaves are green, the weather is nice, the sounds are peaceful, people lie to us, the bank doesn't give us credit. Every day of our lives, we're having one kind of experience or another, aren't we? And we tend to take them all for granted. But every single one of them is the fruit of one of my personal past actions. I might share them with you. We both have the same flood. So it's the fruit of your negative karma and the fruit of my negative karma, and we have it together, but we have it because we must have created the cause. So every experience in a day is the fruit of some karma. But most of the time we just float along thinking things are good luck and bad luck. You understand? We don't, there's karma. Or as Lama Zopa says, everything is our karmic appearance, So it's a very dynamic way to apply it. So you don't take anything for granted. So when it's the good stuff, you don't just eat it up greedily. You go, wow, I can't believe it. This is the fruit of my past virtue. So for me, if I think of virtuous karma, I don't get sick much. I go, okay, don't waste it. I must keep being virtuous. I must keep not killing. I must keep creating more of that karma. So we take it seriously and apply it every day. Then you make the most of your life, Do you understand, Christine? Yeah. Good. And it takes time though, because this is really, this view of karma is a very powerful, it's a brilliant example of dependent arising. And dependent arising is the king of logics, as Lama Yeshe puts it, to prove emptiness. So already, even though we're nowhere near emptiness yet, that comes at university level. But here already, if we can apply it, dependent arising is the main logic that proves emptiness, and karma is a brilliant example of the first level of dependent arising, which is cause and effect. So it's a great way to apply it to everything. It's really excellent. It's very delicious. Yes, Simona.
Hi,
Sweetheart.
Robina.
Hello, darling.
So I have a question about that. For a specific topic. So I am a dentist. So often, people come to me with infections. So I have to prescribe antibiotics.
That's right, yeah.
And I have always in my mind that I am intentionally giving something to people that I have to help, but I am prescribing something that kills bacteria. So how can we deal with it?
It's a very good point. But have we first established clearly that a bacterium is a sentient being? That's we have to establish that. What does science think? Is it a real living being, or is it just a physical thing? What do they say? What's the scientific view of what a bacteria is, a bacterium?
I don't know the answer. I don't know.
The scientific world says, the Western world. You don't know what a bacteria is. What is it? What do they say it is?
The bacteria has a nucleus. So has the possibility to duplicate, to it's a
I mean, science does observe that there are many living beings, like our body is a walking zoo, isn't it? They're sentient beings, we can see that. But why do we assume bacteria is sentient? Why are you assuming that?
They live, they have a life, they can die.
But what do you mean? But so do leaves and trees. They're not sentient beings, though.
Okay.
So what a sentient being is a mind possessor. And of course, this is tremendously difficult to prove. You've got to be clairvoyant to see whether or not something has a mind in it. We can deduce that I've got a mind because I'm still sick, shouting and yelling and kicking. So we can say, oh, she's still alive. Her mind hasn't gone yet. But when it gets to very subtle phenomena in our bodies, I mean, maybe with microscopes we can see. I mean, I've heard that just our mouth is like an ecosystem. It's like a living zoo just under our armpit, and they are even saying they're sentient beings. But whether they're all sentient, that's another discussion. But the fact is, that's the first point. But the second point, Simona, you are giving a bacteria, an antibacteria, whatever they're called, to help a person. You're not giving it with an intention to kill anything. I mean, everything you give, even the most mundane, most kind, benign thing like a carrot could be harming some sentient being in my body, but that's not the intention. And we can't avoid that because we're breathing in countless sentient beings just by existing. So I don't think there's much negativity there. But if you want to think about it extra, you can think, and if this does harm others, all the creatures in her body, I really have compassion for them and have no wish to harm them. You can't say, you be conscious, and that's good, because they say, the Buddhists would say, there's not a single atom of space where you won't find, that isn't pervaded by sentient beings. You could argue wherever there are the four elements, there are sentient beings right there. Do you see my point, Simona?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Robina.
Good, darling. So have compassion in case you are harming them, you know.
Thank you.
Yes, hello, Wolfgang. Talk to me, my dear.
Venerable Robina, I would like to read the Lamrim. How can I read the Lamrim? I went to Amazon and typed in Atisha Lamrim, nothing popped up.
Oh, that's very interesting. That's amazing. There are about 4 million books published. Let me have a think about the ones that I think might be best for you. Would you mind just emailing me and remind me, and I'll check up on what's available and recommend the one I think you might like, or give you some options. Would you mind doing that?
That would be wonderful. But just for my understanding, so is there like the Bible? There is one Lamrim, that's the Lamrim?
Oh, no, okay. Atisha wrote this little text called Light the lamp on the path. But it's, as usual, it's very kind of very, what's the word, brief, no commentary. So then since then there have been these commentaries, the explanations of it, in all the traditions, but in particular our tradition, and they're typically called the path to enlightenment, the stages of the path. I mean, Tsongkhapa, our 14th century lineage Lama, I mean, there's like 3 volumes of his actual text being published, as well as many, many, many commentaries on his the whole path. But there's so many, some are short. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's commentary. Geshe Sopa. Which one is that? Is that wisdom? Is that Geshe Sopa, or is that Tsongkhapa? What does it say?
Tsongkhapa.
Yeah, that's right. That's one of the volumes. There are 5 volumes.
Yeah, right. Yep.
And that's a really in-depth one. It's 3, but no, I think Tsongkhapa, I think one of them published by Wisdom is a commentary by Geshe Sopa, which is 5 volumes, I think. And another one, I think that one, Snow Lion or Shambhala published it, and that's Tsongkhapa himself, the 14th century one. That's called the Great Lamrim. So that's a typical one. It's a classic presentation, but it's very, very detailed. And I've missed out on all the first part. All the very first part is all the details about the Buddha and all about the prayers and the lineage lamas, and there's much other stuff there. But you might find it very interesting. So just keep going. Also, some shorter ones to you, some brief ones that might where you get the taste more easily.
And reading directly the lamp of the path from Atisha doesn't make sense. Going directly back to the source.
It doesn't matter, but I mean, it's very brief and there's no detail. Tsongkhapa took that as his basis, and he's provided 3 volumes of commentary on it. Of course you can read it. Nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing wrong.
I will write you an email. Thank you very much.
Well, and also the other one is, I mean, well, there's one that I've been using for years that I've done, which is my very simple way of presenting, like you hear me saying it very simply, which could be good as an example side by side, because in my simple language, it helps you get the overview of the shape. And that one is one that you might even have a copy of it. I can send you that PDF. But the other, and I'll send you that one. I think it's something that I first taught in 2005. And then when I taught the Lamrim November course in Kopan in 2019, we published that as the main text we use for that month. It's called a very simple presentation. What do I call it? A very simple presentation of the, I'll forget, but I'll send you that. And that's my simple presentation of this stages of the path. Okay.
Thank you very much. I will email.
Right. Thank you, Wolfgang. Yeah. Okay, people, come on then. Questions, people. And the thing is, this Lamrim, what it is basically what Atisha did was take the essential points from this vast body of knowledge that had been there from Atisha's time for a good 1,500, 2,000 years. That was in 11th century, so 11,000 before that, maybe 1,500 years from all the time, all the vast body of knowledge from all the great monastic university systems starting back at Nalanda Monastery in the 5th century. And he took the essence of that, from that vast body of knowledge, the essence of it, and presented it in this experiential order. You know? Do you understand, Wolfgang? That's what he did. Okay. Yes, Alona.
Hello, Venerable. Thank you for your teachings.
Hello, darling.
You mentioned, is it different stages or of depending arising?
What, dear?
Depending arising.
What about it?
Is it, does it has different stages or I misunderstood?
I don't understand the question. So what do you mean by the question? What do you think dependent arising? What do you mean? What are you meaning by dependent arising?
Cause and
What do you
effect.
mean by it?
Cause
No,
and effect.
dependent arising isn't cause and effect. No. Cause and effect is an example of the broader philosophical view that everything exists in dependence upon various factors. Causes is just one thing. Things depend upon for their existence. The second thing things depend upon for their existence is their parts. And the subtlest thing that things depend upon for their existence is the mind labeling them. The 3 levels of dependent arising: causes, parts, and mind. You understand?
Yes.
You've
yes.
heard these words before.
Yeah, I've heard these words. I didn't put this in depending arising.
That's right. That's all the 3 levels of dependent arising. Dependent arising is the main topic. If you've got that Lamrim copy of the Book of Mind, right?
Yes, yes.
You'll find dependent arising down at the end, talking about emptiness. It's the main logical reasoning to use to prove emptiness. That's where it's described in that chapter, in the end part. You understand?
Yes, yes.
Karma is an example of the first level of dependent arising, which is that we exist in dependence upon our past actions. Do you understand? Do you understand?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
What else, people? Yes. Hello, Vivian.
Nice to see you, Venerable.
Yes.
Yes, I have a question, and it's just to do with karma and present and future lives. Obviously, people who are like Lama Zopa Rinpoche or Lama Yeshe, their reincarnations are looked for, and then they are taught from the beginning. So their continuation of working in the path is pretty much guaranteed. But I'm just interested in the people like us who like only been doing it for a very short period of their lives, didn't grow up with it, working very hard with it, obviously, until that we die. But we then hopefully are reborn in a precious human form. Is it our karma that because of what we have done, that we at some stage may come again to Buddhism? Or is that like complete chance?
No, darling, according to the law of karma, if you think of something like, this is why I've got to get used to the concept that karma is a natural law. So if you think of botany, you would never say there's something growing in your ground that didn't have a cause. You couldn't just say it's chance, could you? You know that whatever you find in your garden has to have a seed there. Would you agree with that? That makes sense, doesn't it? Well, you know, and any law that we know, even the simplest laws of math, 1 + 1 is 2. Okay, things get more complicated. They get coherent and consistent. So if there's a natural law called botany, then once you establish that, every time you sow a rose seed, you can guarantee you'll get a rose bush. You won't get an apple tree. So there's logic to the laws by definition means they're logical and coherent and can be proven to be true. That's what we mean by science. That's why Mr. Galileo started getting into trouble. Do you understand what I'm saying? So there can't be anything that happens in anybody's life that doesn't come from a cause that they did. It's not possible. So it's not a question of maybe you practiced in the past. Any tendency in your mind has come because you've done it before, whether it's murder, raping, killing, being a Buddhist, playing music, whatever it is. It can't be random. It can't be. It seems like it. It seems to pop up out of the blue. You understand? Well, so does a flower. If you don't understand botany, then you just think a flower pops up one day with no logic. But if you understand botany, you know there's logic to it. Do you understand me?
Yes, I do. So basically we have come to Buddhism now in our lives because of previous karma. And so theoretically then in a future life, if we've
the more you do anything, whether it's practicing Buddhism or piano, the more logically you will continue to do it and keep meeting the condition, good or bad. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right.
Thank you. That's a good explanation.
Good, Vivian. Thank you, darling. Who else then, people? What other questions? That's the one. I think this is again my point, both to Christine and then also to you, Vivian. It's very hard for us to hear, hang on, Maria. It's very hard for us to hear that because we just wake up in life and things exist out there and there's no natural feeling, is there? We don't feel naturally that what we see out there, as Lama Zopa puts it, is our own karmic appearance. Everything really does appear like we're this little innocent victim. Then there's this mean sister next to this mean sister who does this to me, that nice person who smiles at me, the ugly weather, the lovely cake. It always looks like it's got nothing. Hear this point. It seems like it's coming from somewhere else, having nothing to do with me. That's how deep the delusion is, which is why it's so hard to hear about karma. It just seems too weird for us, because we just assume everything's someone else. We assume either there's God who creates it all and keeps his plan in his pocket. And if we have faith in God, then you'll be happy because you know he's got a plan and you don't care if he doesn't tell you his plan. Or you've got the materialist view, and as we politely say, well, we don't know all the answers yet. I'm glad we've admitted it. Or you have the Buddhist view, which is this one, that every millisecond of whatever appears in front of you, that a slight cool breeze on a hot day, that's the fruit of one of your past virtues. An ugly, stinky smell of a smelly toilet as you walk past the smelly toilet, that's the fruit of a negative karma. Everything that you call pleasing or happy or nice is the fruit of a past virtue. Everything you call ugly or unpleasing or unnice, that's the fruit of a negative karma. It's a very simple theory, but it's just so shocking, So that's the thing to constantly remember. There can't be such a thing as random. It's not coherent, if this is a natural law. That's the idea. It takes a long time, I tell you, to think this. And it really helps. It's almost understanding emptiness. Everything's dependent on arising. Every single tiny thing is dependent upon our past lives, dependent upon our past actions. That's what it means. I mean, it's the exact opposite of the Christian teaching, and it's the exact opposite of the materialist teaching. The materialist teaching is that your mother and father made you. For the Buddha, this is the wackiest thing he's ever heard, with respect. It's like, in other words, we believe in the depth of our being that I don't play any role in what happens to me. We're like this innocent victim, Either good things happen, it's called good luck, and give me more of that, please, or it's bad luck, and how dare that happen to me. That's how we suffer. That's the exact opposite to dependent arising and emptiness and karma. So it's quite profound, really. It takes time to see it like this, Okay, what else, people? Yes, who was there? Had their hand up. Where are you? Maria, yes, sweetheart.
Thank you very much, Venerable.
Okay.
It has helped me a lot, but the way I understand it, and the question will come, is that our previous lives generate, through the karma from our previous life, we come to this particular world, samsara. And that defines, the experience, the tendencies, the background, the environment, the forms define the foundations of the beginnings. And the challenge is to first understand, comprehend what we carry. And at the same time, the challenge is to identify our purpose and go beyond that, understand how this all fits in a bigger picture. And this is, the question is the challenge is how it fits to the purpose of our life, because we always have a purpose and purpose.
Those last words, what were those last words you said, Howard?
How we align that to the purpose of our lives, right? Because the purpose is indeed to become Buddha, but before we go that, there are steps, there are kind of our path. And following that path, one is to do the virtues, but we all have our own purpose in life, to give something, to contribute, to not only to ourselves, to the society, to everyone.
Okay, now I hear what you're saying. Okay, so surely, okay. So if you think about, if you've got the goal, let's use an idea. If you've got the goal of Buddhahood, let's say, well, let's say you're born in Tibet, where that's a very vivid, everybody believes it. Let's just say that. And so that's your goal. And you know that here in this life, you're a mother and you have 5 babies, and this is what you're doing in this particular life, based on virtue, based on wisdom, based on bodhichitta. You be a good mother. And then that sows positive seeds in your mind. Then maybe you aspire, well, next life, may I be a nun. So next life, due to that past virtue as a mother, now the shape you take is as a nun. Then maybe the next life you'll be a carpenter, but they're just the shapes and forms you take as a human, but they're all driven by wisdom and compassion. And that's the part that leads you to Buddhahood. Being a carpenter is incidental. Being a nun, even, you could argue, is incidental. Being a mother is, and that's all. So you use whatever the shape is in each life, but it's driven by the same wisdom and the same wish to become a Buddha. That part never varies. You see my point? One life you might become a musician, and due to your bodhicitta, you benefit, you become a famous musician, and millions of people know you and love you, but you're driven by bodhicitta. They don't know. That's your bodhisattva path in that life, and you make karmic connection with millions of people, and you'll meet them in future lives. So it's very different. It depends on you, your goal, your purpose, but the long-term purpose would never vary. You get my point? That would be the position you'd take. You understand me?
Yes, I do. I have difficulty, and that's because of my limitations, obviously, to align the purpose to the final, understanding emptiness and equanimity, and how to fit that together in the path. But this is, I'm on the process, on the way to.
I mean, so but you see, like I'm saying, there's the external form you take as a mother in one life that looks like, oh, she is a mother. Then every decision, if you're trying to do this path, every decision you make, you would try and base it on renunciation, wisdom, and compassion. Well, the same as whether you're a nun, the same as if you're a musician. That's external. That's just incidental. But the underneath one, what your mind is thinking, that's the constant. That's the constant.
I understand that now.
See my point?
Yes, it's the value, the principles that drive.
Yeah, whatever you do, whether it's a carpenter, whether you're a toilet cleaner, or whether you're a multimillionaire, you be driven by the wish that this activity will help you help others, and it'll help you develop your qualities. Put it like that in a simple sense. You understand me? That's the constant.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. What else, people? Another hand up? Was another hand up? No. So, yeah, okay. What else there, Lars? Nothing?
Maybe it will be about the time of death, the best way to die with peace of mind.
Yeah, that's the point. Okay, that's the point. Of course, the death one is here. That's why Lama Zopa's book is so helpful. How to face death without fear. The death process is described in great detail in the Vajrayana, coming from the great yogis. So the death time is extremely important. If you think we've got millions and millions of karmic seeds from countless lifetimes, so it's crucial at the time of death for one of the positive seeds that will be triggered, that will ensure at least another human birth. And the other seeds will be at least virtuous ones that will help us have strong, good tendencies and good experiences and good environment and access to the Dharma. So we have to create all those causes, and then we need to make sure we have a very good condition at the time of death, which means to be peaceful, so that the virtuous karmic seeds can have the opportunity to be triggered. That's why, as Lama Zopa says, if you want to help anybody in this life, when they need you most is at the time of death. And that sounds weird to us in the materialist world, but from the Buddhist perspective, it's totally logical, because it's a really dangerous time for most people. There's so much fear, there's so much anguish, so much drama, that there's no chance to be really conscious and to die well, which means having good conditions so that the virtuous seeds have the opportunity to be manifest. It's extremely powerful. So whether it's your pussycat or your next door neighbor or your husband, help them die peacefully. That's the best. But you need to have the good karmic seeds there. And that's why living in vows is so incredibly important. So let me just finish with that one. This is the crucial one to understand practically. The Buddha loves vows. He gives an enormous power to this idea of a vow. And I always try to talk about it in a simple way, because again, we have many false ideas about a vow. A vow is a decision to refrain from something. Okay, so the Buddha is saying that vows have like a subtle physical, almost like a subtle physical energy that's visible to the high practitioners who are clairvoyant. These vows are so powerful, meaning you kneel down at the day you took refuge and you make this powerful decision. You repeat 3 times, and you take from your teacher, who got it from their teacher, who got it from their teacher, who got it from their teacher, and you can track it all the way back in this unbroken power source, right back to the Buddha, this particular set of Buddha's, his grouping of vows. I will never kill, I will never steal, I will never lie, whatever, the 5 lay vows. So what that does, because you're making a strong decision, it's going deeply into your mind. And Lama Zopa says, and this is Buddha's teaching, that actions done, a virtuous action done, like non-killing, without living in vows, is very good. But it's the only time you leave a karmic imprint in your mind of non-killing, and we need bucket loads of them at the time of death to make sure we get a good rebirth. The only time your action of non-killing will leave a seed in your mind is when there is a mouse there, you have the intention to not kill, you have a compassionate motivation to not kill, you consciously do the action of non-killing, and the result is a happy mouse. Now, how often in a day do we do that? And without vows, that's the only situation in which you would put a virtuous karmic seed of non-killing in your mind. And this is not enough. We cannot, just being good is not enough, as Lama Zopa says. Whereas if you have a vow in your mind stream, you've made this conscious decision from now until the time of my death. You're programming your mind with it. I will never kill. I will never steal. I will never lie. And every day you do your purification practice and you regret the killing and stealing and you vow again to keep your vow. You're programming your mind psychologically with such power. It's logical. It's not mystical, And it's just basically like I always use this example. When you learn to drive a car, if you wrote down the number of things that you vow not to do, as well as a number of things that you promise you will do, both of those are what make you a good car driver. So this is the same thing here. We have vows, which are decisions to refrain from something. And then we have commitments, which is a decision to do something. And everything we do has both components. It's a practical method. And that both of them, when there's a firm decision, it has much more power for the mind, rather than just randomly doing it, So that's what makes karma so powerful. That's enough. 7 minutes short, Lars. It's all right.
Yes,
we've covered plenty, as always.
Perfect.
Okay. So we just dedicate, we think. These seeds have gone in our minds, you know, it's the 87 minutes non-stop. Thoughts, words, thoughts, all the seeds have gone in. Maybe you think we're going to nourish these seeds by continuing to practice, think about all this, make sense of it, you know, apply it for my sake and for the sake of others in this world. Jang chub sem chog rinpoche ma ke panam ke gyu chig ke panyam pa me pa yang gong ne gong ju pa ba shog. All right, people. All right, sweethearts. That's it. Thank you.